Hey everyone, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking exactly what the transition to R-454B refrigerant actually means for your day-to-day HVAC work. Look, if you're a contractor, a tech, or a business owner in this space, you already know the landscape is shifting in a major way. And we aren't just talking about swapping out one chemical for another, we are talking about a top-to-bottom overhaul in equipment engineering, safety protocols, and literally the tools sitting in your truck right now.
Because by January 1st, 2026, new environmental regulations are going to completely rewrite the rules on what types of systems you can legally install and service. The era of the R-410A air conditioner? Yeah, that's coming to a close for new installs. So you're probably asking, what exactly is replacing it? And more importantly, why does this matter so much for your bottom line and your personal safety?
Well, this whole mandate is actually driven by the AIM Act, which passed back in 2020. The big overarching goal here is to push the industry away from older hydrofluorocarbons like R-410A to hit a massive, a 78% reduction in global warming potential, or GWP. And listen, this isn't just a polite suggestion from the EPA, it's a hard regulatory phase-down, no way around it. To help you navigate all this, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the shift to low GWP, we'll meet the new R-454B chemistry, debunk the whole drop-in myth, outline your mandatory tool upgrades, and finally, look at the new leak detection systems.
So, starting us off, Section 1, the shift to low GWP.
These regulatory deadlines are coming up fast. In fact, manufacturing for new R-410A residential equipment actually ended on January 1st, 2025. But January 1st, 2026? That is the hard stop for installing them. Now, existing systems are grandfathered in, so yes, you can still service them. But for anything brand new, 2026 marks day one of this new era.
Moving right along to Section 2, meet R-454B refrigerant. You might actually know R-454B by a few different trade names, like Carrier's Puron Advance or Opteon XL41 from Chemours. But what's really fascinating here is that it isn't just a single chemical. It's actually a highly specific zeotropic blend. It's composed of exactly 68.9% R32, which is a hydrofluorocarbon, and 31.1% R1234YF, a hydrofluoroolefin. This very specific recipe is exactly what gives it its unique properties.
By combining those two exact compounds, engineers were able to achieve a drastically lower GWP of just 466. To put that into perspective, R-410A sits at an incredibly high 2088. So this is a massive drop. And that right there is exactly what makes R-454B environmentally compliant for the next decade and well beyond.
However, you got to keep in mind, that new chemical makeup brings a pretty major change to your safety protocols. Under the ASHRAE classifications, R-410A was an A1, meaning completely non-toxic and non-flammable. But R-454B, that's classified as an A2L. The A still means non-toxic, but that 2L means mildly flammable. Now, mildly is absolutely the key word here. For it to actually ignite, it requires a direct flame source and a highly, highly concentrated leak. And even if it does ignite, the flame spread rate is less than half a mile per hour. That is literally slower than a typical walking pace. But from a regulatory and engineering standpoint, that little 2L designation changes the whole shebang.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the drop-in myth debunked.
So, because R-454B happens to share similar operating pressures with the old standard, there's this really dangerous myth floating around that it's just a simple drop-in replacement. Let's clear that up right now. You absolutely, under no circumstances, can put R-454B into an old R-410A system or vice versa. It is definitely not a drop-in. Manufacturers can actually detect blended refrigerant during lab analysis, and if you do this, it instantly voids the equipment warranty and it puts you on the hook for some seriously hefty EPA fines. Just don't do it.
Why is it such a big deal? Well, because the physical equipment itself is entirely different. A2L systems require specific safety hardware that older units literally just don't have. They also need completely different POE oil formulations. And while the pressures might seem somewhat similar at a glance, the saturation temperatures differ in a really meaningful way. So your old gauge readings, they won't even be accurate. Mixing these is just a one-way ticket to poor lubrication and a guaranteed failed compressor.
And here's a pretty fascinating bit of engineering reality for you. R-454B systems are actually designed with roughly 10 to 20% more heat transfer surface on their coils just to deliver the exact same cooling capacity as an older R-410A design. So if you were to pour R-454B into an R-410A coil, you aren't going to get matching capacity. Instead, your system is just going to end up running way longer, totally struggling to dehumidify and putting in all that extra time just to do a fraction of the work.
All right, let's move on to Section 4, upgrading your HVAC tools. Since the refrigerant and the equipment are both changing, the contents of your service truck are going to need a serious overhaul before 2026. The new industry standard makes things pretty obvious visually. R-454B recovery cylinders are now marked with a bright red band or a red top. That's there to instantly warn techs of their mildly flammable A2L contents. But trust me, the changes go way beyond just a fresh coat of paint.
To work on these systems safely, and legally of course, you really have to upgrade your gear. Because of that A2L flammability rating, you're now required to use entirely non-sparking recovery machines and non-sparking vacuum pumps. And here's a big one. Those red-topped recovery cylinders, they now use left-handed or reverse threads. Now I know it's going to totally mess with your muscle memory at first, but it's actually a brilliant physical failsafe. It guarantees you never accidentally connect an A1 hose to an A2L tank and cross-contaminate. You're also going to need separate manifolds and digital gauges that are updated with the brand new R-454B saturation tables.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, leak detection and dissipation.
So arguably, the absolute biggest safety innovation required for these new systems is the Active Refrigerant Detection System, or RDS. Basically, every system charged with a significant amount of R-454B, which is typically anything over about 4 pounds, must feature a communicating control board exactly like the one you see here. Think of this board as the central brain of the safety operation just in case there's an indoor leak. Older R-410A systems, they had absolutely nothing even close to this.
To fully grasp how this board actually keeps a home safe, we first need to quickly define the LFL, which stands for Lower Flammable Limit. In simple terms, this is the absolute minimum concentration of R-454B in the air that could potentially catch fire if a flame was somehow introduced. But here's the beauty of it. The RDS is meticulously engineered to react long before the refrigerant ever gets anywhere near that danger zone.
Here's how that all comes together in an automated safety sequence. The very moment those sensors detect R-454B reaching just 12 to 20% of the LFL, the control board instantly springs into action and triggers what's called dissipation mode. First thing it does, it completely kills all power to the compressor and any potential ignition sources, like your electric or gas heat. At the exact same time, it blasts the indoor blower fan. This rapidly circulates the air, safely diluting that leaked gas throughout the ductwork until the concentration drops safely back down to normal levels. It's just an incredibly effective, fully automated failsafe.
So, as we wrap up this explainer today, the main takeaway is crystal clear. The transition to R-454 is not just a suggestion, and it's certainly not a drop-in scenario. This is a massive, structural shift that's going to impact your safety and your daily workflow. The 2026 deadline is literally knocking at the door right now. So, the real question is, are you taking the steps to upgrade your training and your toolkit today, or are you planning to be left behind tomorrow?